Okay, so we add query and path parameter to get request. Although in the example you have seen, like, these parameters are added in the post also, but that is not a good idea. Post everything should go in the body. So I'll just make it full screen. If you see here, right, I have given two examples, like, users question mark ID equal to 123. That is basically the query parameter. And if you pass it something like user slash 123, that is path parameter. But in this case, actually, both are doing the same, right? So the first one also will fetch the record 123, and second one also will fetch the record 123. Then what is the difference, right? Basically, path parameter will give you a unique resource, right? Unique record. But query parameter also will give you a unique record, but it is like a filter. No, you can add more than one query parameter in your GET request, depending on your implementation. For example, if users has other fields like, name or maybe phone number, right? So you can also add like users question mark ID equal to 123 and phone number equal to Manju. 123456 and name equal to Manju. So it will filter the records based on those parameters and it will return. If it is not finding, maybe it will it will throw an error. That is the basic difference between query parameter and path parameter. In path parameter, you cannot pass multiple things. It's just a single parameter and it will uniquely identify a resource. Okay, but in query, you can pass any number of parameters. And these query parameters are actually used for filters, search filters basically. Okay, so if you see any records or any web tables in your application, you can just see how the query parameters filters are working. Just go to your Chrome console and then you can see how these are actually used. And again, from a testing point of view, we need to test these two, like query parameters as well as path parameters. Okay. Negative scenarios you can think about, like you are giving an identity number which is not exist, like user maybe one is not exists, and you are trying to give that as a query parameter. You should get some errors. Similarly, you are trying to add a filter, maybe that filter name itself is missing, so you should get an error. Okay. Next is headers. So yeah, headers are very important actually. So how does a server knows, right, what is this request all about? Until and unless from the client side we are telling specifically this is a GET request or this is a POST request, this is my on a content type, server may not be able to identify what action it has to do, right? That's where the headers come into picture. Very, very important. So we have specifically like general headers and request headers and response header. So when I send a request to the server, there might be something will go into general header, and there will be something specific to that request I can send in a request header. For example, the content type, right? So suppose you want to handle only or accept only application JSON as a content type. So you have to specifically tell the server that my accept is only this, or my content type is only this. Okay, then connection. Now, how long you want to keep the connection active? So those kind of parameters, we can set in the request header. And then authentication, very important. So when you want to authenticate, your request, right? So you will be sending some, token or username password based on the authentication type. So those information we sent it in a header. And once the request is, process, server knows that this is what it is, and it sends back a response. So in the response header, again, some of the things like, connection type and then content length, right? What is the length of that payload? How much actually data server is returning? What is the content type, right? And what is the status code? So all those things will come in response header. Okay. So from a testing point of view, we need to actually verify both, right? So when we send a request, we have to verify, like, all the mandatory headers we are passing. Sometimes, like, people says, okay, no, I have sent a request, no, from the browser it is accepting, but when I send a request from Postman, it is not accepting. So what happens, right? What is the difference when I send a request from browser and from a Postman? Now maybe when you send a request from browser, right, so some of the things, like suppose you have already signed in to the application, so you are authorized to do some actions and you are able to perform it. But when you come back to Postman, right, so when the request goes to the server may not know who you are, right? You have to actually authorize yourself by passing some token and all in the headers. Okay, so then only server will know, okay, what action has to be performed and what kind of data you are expecting. Okay, so yeah, request and response header, let's see, with some example. Like, so I'm going to again indiatimes.com. How you can see, actually, just open your console and then go to network tab. Okay, so after that, any action you do, network tab will capture. If you are sending some APIs, right? Mainly here it is all the documents. Yeah. Here you can see what is coming in the general, right? So this is like method is get, status code is 200. What is the remote address? That means that is the remote address of indiatimes.com, and 443 is the port. Then I have something called response header and request header. Okay, since this is just the plain get request, right? So you are not seeing something informative here. So it's only user agent and all, since I am accessing it from the browser, right? But when you access APIs from any client, so user agent and all, we don't need to pass. Now here, response header, you can see content length, right? Then content type, it is text and HTML. But in our case, it might be, application JSON. So how you will know, like, what and all is, supported. So if you come here in the Postman, right? So yesterday we have done something. In the header section, you can see all this. This is the response header, basically. So for example, accept, right? So */* means it will accept anything. But if you want to restrict it to, accept only application JSON, then you have to pass this application JSON. Then in the post request, we have sent some headers, right? See here, content type, for example, right? So content type, we have sent application/JSON. And we can even change it. I don't know why it is not taking, but you should be able to change. your headers and all. Okay, this is I think response header, so it is not changing. But whenever request headers are there, you can add. I can show you creating a new request. Like, see here, I can just type, then you can see the list. For example, content type, right? So application, if I type application, you can see all different types. Majorly, I'm concerned only about application JSON and application XML. That's the two things I'm focusing as content type. But no, when you are sending some data like file and all, right? So you can also send files. So how you can actually do it, that we will see in the upcoming classes. So this is what header is all about. Okay, we will see some more authorization stuff in detail when I covered the authorization section. Otherwise, mainly for testing we actually check this accept, then content type. These are the two things which you need to pay attention to when you do the testing. And then connection also, like suppose you have any requirement, like you don't want to keep the connection alive all the time. So that kind of validations we generally do. Okay. Any questions on the headers part?
So when you say like accept, like we'll do for testing, like what kind of parameters will be considering there?
See, mainly, no, suppose you want to restrict to only application JSON, right? So here they have not restricted in this parameter. But accept in the accept, if you want to accept only specific content type, you can do it. Otherwise, content type header will take care. Okay. What we pass in accept mainly like star slash slash, that means it will accept everything. But if you are adding additional parameter content type, so so that server knows that you are expecting actually application JSON. But here in the get request, there might be chances that you are expecting also a HTML page, right? So mostly like HTML images and all. So in that case, you have to give star dot slash star specifically, so that it will not restrict anything. When you do a post or you are actually doing a put, then content type makes more sense. Like you want to restrict to specific content type, you can do it. Again, here, if you see user agent, for example, right, when I was showing you from the browser, it was showing actually browser specific. This is again, taken care by the Postman itself, right? So Postman only sending user agent, like user agent means from where it is actually coming. So it is showing like Postman runtime, some number. Okay, so I'll quickly cover the request body, but I will show you more example maybe tomorrow, like for each one. So I'll just explain it, because request body we have to learn at least in detail. So there are basically 4 parts here: multi-part or form data. So you have already seen form data, right? So how we can send data from the UI, right? So suppose you have a form, it's like a key value pair, right? So and you can send that data in the body. Then even URL encoded also you can you can send as an URL, encoded URL. And then raw, we have seen yesterday, like how you can send the raw data like JSON. It's not restricted to JSON. You can send any data like text data, XML data and all. And binary, as in binary also you can send like a file. For example, you are doing a file upload, right? We will see an example of how actually you can upload files in Dropbox, that I will maybe cover tomorrow. Binary, basically file will go as a raw binary, so you have to from the Postman, if you're passing it, then you can just browse that file and pass it. But yeah, if you are sending that request from any programming language like rest assured, right? So you have to first read the file and convert to binary and then send. Okay, I'll quickly show you here in the body section of your post. If you go to post, right, body, right? So yesterday we have seen this one, right? So the raw JSON. So it has other options like text. You can send JavaScript, JSON, HTML, or XML format. Okay. And as I told, the first one was the from data. So that is nothing but key value pair. Like the example, the source code I was showing, right? So suppose you have something like user name, then the value is Manju, and maybe you have password, the value is something, then maybe you have email, value is something, right? So you can also pass data as a form in the post request. This is also one option. Depending on our implementation, we can use it. We'll see more examples in the coming classes. Then we have this binary. So as I told, suppose you are uploading a file, you can select a file, any file, like I don't have any text file. Okay, so if you see, it is loaded and it will go as a binary file. Suppose in a Dropbox kind of application, right? So it will allow you to upload any kind of file, or maybe Google Drive, right? So suppose you want to upload some files in a Google Drive, so it will allow you to maybe upload text file or images, right? Or any HTML files. It can be any file. The restriction has to come in the server side. Like if you don't want to upload any specific file type, or then you can put a restriction. Otherwise, in the API you can send any file. Mainly, the application I tested were related to images, like image upload or text file upload. And I think I uploaded the documents also, like Excel and Word documents. And then if you're thinking from a testing point of view, like we need to also see what happens when we upload a very huge size file, right? And then probably you can even see if your file is corrupted, and is the server is giving you back any errors. That kind of scenarios we can test. Supported file, suppose it is filing only two image type, like JPEG and PNG, and you are sending a file of other type, then it should give error. You can definitely send multiple files, because if you have seen, right, some applications, for example, you are doing registration, right, or you are submitting your IT returns.